Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Perspectives, Silicon Valley's Path Forward. We certainly want to thank you for taking the time to join us, and we are excited to hear from our panelists about their organization's responses to COVID-19 in Silicon Valley, as well as a look at what the future might hold. My name is Morgan Dussault, and I'm the Donor Relations Director here for the Salvation Army of Silicon Valley. Now, before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to participate in today's session. We've taken a sample screenshot of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this with the control panel at the side of your computer screen. You may have joined the presentation using your computer system's speaker system by default. This means if you can hear music through your computer, you should be able to hear the presentation. If you prefer to join over the telephone, please refer to the confirmation email you received with the dial-in number and meeting ID. You will also have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's speakers by typing them into the box in your control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will attempt to address as many as possible during the Q&A portion at the end. You will also receive a link to the recording of the presentation via email within the next week. And with that, I am pleased to introduce today's speakers. First, we have Mayor Sam Liccardo. Mayor Liccardo is serving in his second term as mayor of the city of San Jose, the 10th largest city in the United States. During his tenure as mayor, he has led efforts to fund the construction of thousands of units of affordable housing, launched the nation's largest community choice clean energy utility, and provided jobs for more than 4,000 teens living in gang-impacted neighborhoods. He's also launched multi-billion-dollar investments in new transit, preserved thousands of acres of open space and hillsides from development. And a fun fact about Mayor Liccardo, he was the captain of the heavyweight squad for the Georgetown University rowing team. Now we have Major Roy Wild. Major Wild is the county coordinator here for the Salvation Army of Silicon Valley. He and his wife, Major Paula Wild, have been leading the Silicon Valley Command since 2017 and have been officers of the Salvation Army for more than 21 years. Prior to their appointment to Silicon Valley, they successfully built ministries and programs in more than 7 locations throughout the Western United States, including Hawaii, Colorado, and California. A fun fact about Major Wild, he is an avid Manchester United soccer fan and a 5th generation Salvationist. Next, we have Jennifer Loving. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Destination Home, a public-private partnership which serves as the backbone organization for collective impact strategies to end homelessness in Santa Clara County. Since being tasked to lead Destination Home in 2010, Jennifer has galvanized the support of public officials, government agencies, private sector leaders, nonprofit executives, and leaders with lived experience to implement a collective impact model in Santa Clara County, resulting in over $1 billion in funding and helping over 16,000 individuals secure permanent housing and exit homelessness. A fun fact about Jennifer, she recently became a proud dog mom to Junebug, her sweet pandemic puppy. And finally, we have Lisa Barton-Foss. Lisa is the manager of Medicare sales at Anthem Blue Cross of California. Lisa's passion is to help Medicare recipients understand all of the complexities of Medicare and their benefits and what benefits they're entitled to, and to ensure equitable access to care for all. She is a Bay Area native who is married with 2 children. And a fun fact about Lisa, she has 2 children born on the same day, May 11th, but they are not twins. And finally, we have our moderator for today, Alan Mcclinton. Alan is a valued member of our Salvation Army Silicon Valley Advisory Board. And for his day job, he's a global sales leader at Tesla and an advisor at One Flourish Capital. Since I personally happen to know Alan, a fun fact about Alan is that he is not only a Marine and a West Point grad, but he is an amazing dad that takes double duty to a whole new level. He can often be seen feeding a baby in one arm while mapping out the vision for the future on a whiteboard with the other. He's the ultimate multitasker, and we have loved watching his baby girl grow up over Zoom over the past year. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Alan, and get the panelists started.
Hey, Morgan, I appreciate those very kind words and this warm introduction. The purpose of today's discussion is to highlight pathways of hope and how this kind of cross-functional team we have here on the call unlock the brilliance of Silicon Valley for everyone. So let's start this discussion at March-April 2020 timeframe. COVID disrupts everything and touches everyone. Mayor Liccardo, giving your platform's focus to build sustainable initiatives and infrastructure to uplift the most vulnerable in our city, and given that COVID accelerated this vulnerability, would love to just understand how did you and your office spring to action and what pivots you had to make?
Well, thanks, Alan, and thanks for what you're doing on the board. Such an important organization like Salvation Army. I think about two conversations that hit right before that moment. One I had with Kip Harkness, who's a senior official here at the city, who just happens to have a public health background. And he was pretty focused on this pandemic well before I think many of us were. In fact, he activated our Emergency Operations Center in late January because he saw the signs emerging from Asia that told him that clearly we needed to be ready. And that helped us get an awful lot of our efforts aligned around, for example, food distribution, other efforts that were really going to be critical for us in getting through this pandemic. And the second conversation that comes to mind happened in early March with Jen Loving. And Jen said to me, look, this is going to be devastating for our community. And, we're both thinking through all this. What are the impacts? How many people are going to be pushed out in the street because they can't pay rent, because they can't work? How is it going to affect unhoused residents who are naturally much more susceptible to the pandemic because of comorbidities and health issues that may have? And so her urging really spurred us to think about first an eviction moratorium. We were the first city in the country to announce an eviction moratorium to try to keep our families from adding to the crisis that we already had out in our streets. And then secondly, her efforts really spurred us to be part of a regional effort to raise resources. It became part of Silicon Valley's strong effort for us. And because of her urging, along with leadership of great private sector folks like Chuck Robbins over in Cisco, we were able to raise tens of millions of dollars, and along with some public contributions, I think we're now up to more than 45 million, just providing checks to families to help them be able to keep the wheels on. And so, I think about those early conversations because they were so instrumental in getting us aligned and above all, forcing us to think about the partners that we needed to be working with to be able to respond effectively. And more than anything, I think this pandemic has illustrated to us the power of those partnerships. Private sector, nonprofit, and a lot of nonprofit organizations stepped up in a huge way, and obviously Salvation Army leading among them. And really, because of our work together, we're able to do so much more. I know that nobody ever wins a Nobel Prize for saying, hey, it could have been a lot worse, but the reality is it could have been a lot worse if we didn't have these incredible partners pushing together. And whether it was in food distribution or the digital divide, or addressing homelessness and getting more than 3,000 people off the street and more than 2,000, I think more than 2,200 permanently housed during the pandemic. I mean, there were an enormous amount of efforts, Herculean scale, that we never accomplished before the pandemic because we didn't have that sense of urgency to partner. So I'll stop there because I could keep going on.
No, key terms I hear is a sense of urgency, speed, focus, a courage for bold action. Jennifer, since Sam talked about those initial conversations with you, and I also saw that you raised nearly $11 million overnight. Usually it takes a Silicon Valley startup 6 to 9 months to raise those funds. What change kind of unlocked this fast capital raising and to galvanize, that level of capital, in such a short time, overnight?
Thanks, Alan. First, thanks for having me, and thanks for being our ongoing partner in this work. Salvation Army is very important to our whole system and what we've been doing. And as I talk about what happened during this pandemic, you were a key partner through the whole thing, in terms of making sure the money went to where it needed to go. Sam's right. I smiled when he started talking about it because it was we were just going into shelter in place. And uh, because we had been providing homelessness prevention together, right? Salvation Army has been with us providing homelessness prevention assistance for several years. We already knew that the lowest income households, the families that are making 0 to 30% of area median income, largely households of color, were the ones that are falling into homelessness already. And it was just one sort of catastrophe because the rent burden is so severe. Families are already kind of crippled under paying, 60, 70, 80, 90% of their income towards rent. So when we went into shelter in place and it felt like everything just, the idea I kept having in my head was that we just went through the house and turned off all the lights, right? And that was like jobs, 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 right? And so I was gripped with some panic, and Sam's right. He and I, it was late. I feel like it was late, like on a Friday or Saturday night, right when we were shutting down. And I talked to him, Supervisor Cindy Chavez, and Chuck Robbins, and Poncho Guevara, and said, we're going to get hit hard. Even if it doesn't hurt middle class, just what happened just today is going to cause an ability for people to pay their rent. And so Sam and I were huddling, and I remember really clearly where you said, Mayor, you said, well, I could do an eviction moratorium. And it was like, yes, I'll raise money, you do an eviction moratorium, we will get to work, right? And so that happened. And so Sam did the legislative maneuver that really was the first in the nation. And all the communities followed San Jose, but it was that early, quick sort of. And I actually think that's why other communities move quickly too, because it was like, oh shoot, the 10th largest city is taking this pretty serious, right? So we work to protect our families, but just keeping the wolves from the door isn't enough. A moratorium is one thing, but doesn't absolve the rent. And so luckily, because we'd already been working in community, we were able to say, look, we have a track record of putting money into families' hands. This is going to be bad. The CEO of Cisco, Chuck Robbins, has been a supporter of that. We said, help us. And so people think it was this miracle of like raising money overnight, but it really is years and years and years of building trusted relationships and delivering on the work that you say you're going to do. So that when there was an emergency and you did say, you have to help me now, people were like, yeah, okay, I believe that you are all equipped as the system to deliver because you've been delivering. And so at the beginning, there was a tremendous amount of grace and faith in saying, we trust that y'all are going to handle this. And the mayor and Supervisor Chavez and others were part of that, saying, we're going to have one way of delivering help. And what that ended up meaning was $36 million so far went to 15,000 households. And that is because of you, Salvation Army, and 70 other partners who all also trusted us, right? When we said, oh, we're going to pivot and we're going to really try to just do direct cash assistance, really just to families that are not getting help from the federal government, which is a whole lot of folks, right? That we were going to work together. It was one of the more beautiful, I think, displays of partnership that I've ever been a part of.
Jennifer, that is, thank you for laying out the narrative. Kind of key themes I hear in there is trusted relationships, the power of conversations, and people understanding the platforms and resources they sit on and acting accordingly. Thinking of another platform, Salvation Army, this humongous platform, been here in San Jose, 130 years serving this community. Tremendous legacy. Now, putting my Silicon Valley mindset on, sometimes legacy does not always equate to an organization being able to respond with agility and scale. But Salvation Army did. Just throwing some stats out there, you were able to serve over 120,000 families, delivering 4.3 million pounds of food and serving these families in very unique, customized ways. Major Roy, in what ways did Salvation Army have to develop new products and services and scale to dynamically serve your mission during this disruptive time?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. And again, just thanks, Mayor Liccardo and Jennifer and Lisa for being here. And we couldn't do what we do without partnerships like we're talking about today. And one of the big things that you mentioned, Salvation Army has been here in San Jose for 130 years. Is that trust factor that Jennifer was alluding to. And one of the things that the Salvation Army has the ability to do is to really pivot in a moment of emergency. And when we went into the shelter in place that came down back in March of last year, Salvation Army did that territorially across the whole nation. We went into what we call an emergency disaster services mode, and which we're known for responding to fires or earthquakes or those sorts of things, because we have that infrastructure in place. But specifically to COVID, we really pivoted mainly to, we kept our doors open as far as, in essence, of being able to provide rental assistance and working with Destination Home and HBS, and we didn't stop any of that through that time. But the biggest pivot for us was really in food disparity, knowing that people who are being laid off or furloughed were going to need food. And so we were able to ramp up our food distribution that we do on a daily basis. So just kind of a little bit of context, prior to COVID, just here at our facility in San Jose, on a busy day for us for food distribution of clients coming to us would be about 125 people would be a big day for us. When we were at the apex of COVID, and once we were up and running, we were seeing over 400 people a day come through for emergency food boxes. And so we had to really pivot. And I remember that we had to literally, unfortunately, we had to close down our senior nutrition in-house meal program that we do Monday through Friday, where we serve 150 seniors. And we had to, even in that, pivot from feeding and having a place of safety and recreation in-house to meals for them to come and pick up and go. A meal, they grab their meals and go, plus doing deliveries for seniors of over 100 that were in apartments. So we had that going on. And in that space, all of our staff, in the meantime, were packing food boxes and we're making sure everything was going. And we had a line going outside as people were coming up and then transitioning into drive-through systems. So it was, like everybody, we had to really be able to make some quick decisions. But again, for us, fortunately, that trust is there from the public, but also from the clients that we serve. They know that they can come to the Salvation Army in whatever their moment of crisis is, and we're going to be able to provide that need for them. And it really has a lot to do, again, with the partnerships that we're talking about today.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Lisa, let me bring you in, because you sit at the center of this COVID disruption as part of the healthcare ecosystem. It was shown that COVID, ran rampant during our, with our most vulnerable demographics, seniors and socioeconomically depressed demographics. How did your organization identify critical needs? And very specifically, given that you touch people's lives at such an intimate level, how did you go about that, empathetically accessing the right people that were really hurting and delivering and executing on the services that y'all go about? Love to hear that, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, initially, Anthem decided we had to figure out how we were going to connect with our seniors in our communities, because normally we're out in the field meeting them face to face, meeting them for lunches, meeting them at certain community centers, meeting them at senior centers and whatnot, and then everything is shut down. There was no way for us to meet with them face to face as we normally did, so we had to transition to a new thought process. We had to think outside the box. So in my area, Northern California, the best thing that we could do was volunteer, connect with organizations. We started connecting and working with Feed America. We started working with Salvation Army in the last year directly, figuring out how we could still meet with our seniors and provide services to them as we had done before. So Anthem, as a whole, decided to put a foundation together specific for COVID-19 response. And they committed to standing with the communities and helping those, that were affected by the pandemic. So through relationships through relationships through nonprofit organizations and whatnot, for instance, connecting with American Red Cross, United Way, CDC, X Prize, Mental Health America. So they decided to connect with all these organizations and donated $50 million in the last year to help the seniors in our communities, help families, help children that needed access to meals and whatnot. And directly within our communities, we started providing meals to the seniors' homes. So if you were an Anthem member, we were providing food to our seniors directly at their homes so that they didn't have to leave their houses. We wanted to keep our seniors, we wanted to keep them home. We wanted to keep them safe. We wanted to keep them out of emergency rooms. So we figured out a way to provide them meals that were healthy. We wanted to provide them access to getting COVID tests. So Anthem put in place a COVID testing, and they connected with X Prize to build a COVID testing quick, fast, and so the seniors did not have to leave their houses and to get COVID testing, and they could get access to online to find out what the results were. I mean, those are just a couple of things. But in addition, we started providing virtual care at home in addition, so that seniors didn't have to leave their houses. They could have access to 24/7 care to their, to their PCP specialists, and in addition to mental health, which is obviously a huge issue right now during this pandemic. So those were just a few items that we really needed to transition to right away.
Yeah, Lisa, thank you for sharing that. I want to throw this out to all the panelists and just respond to this. So it's on the topic of equity of access. In every major city, there's these highlighted disparities that take place, whether that be in healthcare and education. No city in North America is doing it, is seeing the outcomes that we all seek to achieve. We have talked about issues and plans that bring pathways of hopes to the most vulnerable. I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts from everyone on like equity of access and how to solve that, and what are the sustainable pathways as we come out of this COVID going forward in terms of the topic of equity access. I throw it out to everyone. Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Sam.
Go ahead. Ladies first, Jennifer. Yeah.
Okay. I would say that there's a lot of lip service, right, about an equitable recovery, a lot of talk about who's been hit the hardest by this pandemic, a lot of talk about racial equity and systemic and structural racism, and then we still roll out funding that reinforces the ways in which we've gotten here. And so, as an example, what I mean by that is lots of talk about the rental crisis and what's going to happen to families who can't pay their rent, that has disproportionately affected families of color, lowest income households. And then we roll out rent relief from the federal government and the state that it's for landlords only, and who owns property, and I'm gonna, who are homeowners.
Come from? Sorry to cut you off, but where does that disconnect come from?
Because I think it's a continued operating under white supremacy thinking and structural race. Like we don't trust poor people with money, so we want to give the money to the landlord, where that's going to be some sort of a safer bet. When we talk with families, rent isn't their only problem. They haven't paid healthcare, they haven't paid childcare, they have other debt. But we, for some reason, will trust corporations with billions of dollars, but we can't give families a little bit of money. So, the movement now with basic income and other ways of like putting money directly into folks' hands, that's good. That's some progress. But until we stop setting up policies and funding that reinforces the things that we say we don't like, we're just talking and we're not really solving.
Mayor, I love to kind of hear your response. Major Roy and Lisa, yeah.
No, I think Jen makes very good points, and we've had similar frustrations with the way in which rent relief is being delivered from our state and federal government. There's no question it's hugely frustrating where you don't have a landlord willing to participate in any way, and you've got a family who's facing getting kicked out on the street and literally trying to figure out, are there any legal options for us to force a landlord just to take the aid to keep the family housed. Hugely frustrating. I might say I think there are some lessons we're learning locally here that are helping us better understand the meaning of access and what it really means to ensure equitable access. I think a lot, you mentioned education. You know, we had been working on digital inclusion for probably 4 years here in San Jose. We launched a digital inclusion fund. We hit up through a bunch of contracts we had with telecoms. We had some funding aligned to try to help more of our families who couldn't afford broadband to be able to get online. But it still was the case that in every city in America, there's this huge digital divide, and we kind of thought it was tolerable for whatever reason, that people couldn't all get online to be able to get access to health information or jobs, or for that matter, learning. When suddenly a pandemic hit, and here in the city of San Jose, everyone realized, hey, we have 67,000 kids who cannot learn right now remotely. And I think it certainly fueled action, which is critical. I think as governments, we started to learn how to become more nimble. That's, I know, responsiveness and nimbleness isn't what we always expect out of government. But what was helpful for us is that we had already started to build the partnerships, for example, at Eastside Union High School District, that were really critical for us to enable us to accelerate and scale. So, you know, we literally connected more than 100,000 residents through a partnership we've got with Eastside Union High School District, provide free broadband, Wi-Fi, and systems that we had started to set up, but we simply didn't have the resources and the impetus to get it done quickly enough. And now we're moving at a pace where by the end of 2022, we're going to have 300,000 people with free broadband. And that's, you know, the equivalent of a city the size of St. Louis or Pittsburgh. It's a very significant share of the population, almost all in East San Jose. And so, you know, look, would have loved to have had the resources to do this 5 years ago, but at least we have the impetus to get that done now and hopefully provide some amount of greater opportunity, educational access, and economic access than existed before the pandemic.
Yeah, and I would say from Salvation Army's side of things, you know, we're very appreciative of what the city's done and Destination Home, again, for making monies available to help that, you know, to help those that are having those issues and those struggles. And so, and that partnership is great. But one of the things that Salvation Army, what we've been doing since the pandemic is really, how can we look to really help our clients kind of break that cycle of poverty that they're dealing with? And so this has really opened up a lot of opportunities for us to work with corporations and with a workforce development type model where we can receive the client and the client can go through our programs, they can receive food and deal with addiction and get housing and be in our transitional programs. But then working with corporations, being able to then be able to give them access, which they normally may not have had access to apply for certain jobs within these corporations. For example, Tesla, we've just started a relationship with them where some of our clients that are living in our transitional program here in San Jose, some of our men have applied for jobs through Tesla, through entry-level positions. So now these clients literally have gone from the streets, living under a bridge, dealt with sobriety, have a place to live, and have a transitional place to live for 2 years. But now they're having equal access now to these jobs of, you know, jobs that are paying 24, 25 bucks an hour. And corporations like Tesla have opened up those doors to allow that equal access for those that they might have missed out without the services that we provide. So we definitely appreciate the funding and the need to pay the rent and the moratorium, and those are fantastic. But we're also looking at then how do we take those clients and give them that equal access to life-sustaining skills that they may not be able to acquire because of their circumstances. And through those type of partnerships, we're able to begin to see those doors open, and it's an exciting thing.
Yeah, you know, I would love to hear from Jennifer and Lisa. Talk to me about, you know, it seems like very critical in a pathway of hope and having some sustainability in that pathway of hope is getting to some level of workforce development. Now, Jennifer, you know a lot of CEOs here in Silicon Valley, and it's very capitalistic here, very different than other cities. We have a strong capital and work basis here. Anthem being one of those organizations. Love to kind of hear, what your conversations look like for the future as it pertains to workforce development for our most vulnerable and equity of access.
Thanks, Alan. I think it has to start with some measure of stability for the people that are job seeking. I think the sort of myth that you're homeless and you can get a job and manage that while you're sleeping in at the bottom of a camp. And what's wrong with you, right? If you can't do that is really pretty messed up. And so the idea of housing first is, some stability of housing is the most basic thing that people need. And then all of these other things come from that basic stability. We all have somewhere to go at tonight, or we're already there because of the pandemic, right? But if you don't have a place to go tonight, you are spending a lot of your day trying to figure just that one thing out. And that is all you do every day, is figure out where you're going to go that night. And if you think about just a fight or flight response and the PTSD of just that, we have to be committed to making sure that people have a place to go, right? Number one. And then it's about what are the wages that are required to be able to afford to live here. There's not a city anymore in the nation where minimum wage equates a place to live in the market, not a city. So, and in Silicon Valley, I think it's like $51 an hour in San Jose that you have to make to afford a place in the market. So to the extent that those jobs, and there's pathways to those jobs, but we need to be having really clear conversations about what these jobs pay and what that means to be able to people want to work, but if you're working and you're sleeping in your car and then you're working a graveyard shift and you're not sleeping, these are not long-term, this is not a long-term way to have a healthy community or health for people. So I don't think that we've done enough to focus first on the basic housing stabilization for people to be in a position yet to be talking about like, oh, well, why aren't they working? So I think these two things work together.
Yeah, I love that, Lisa. Yeah, coming from Anthem.
So as far as jobs and so forth, I can't speak on behalf of that, but what we are doing is providing healthcare to individuals that are on the street, that are homeless. We are connecting with those individuals and providing them healthcare at no cost, and providing them with, basic necessities that they do need in order to survive. I mean, basic necessities that are free of charge to them. So we're trying to provide them with, I don't want to call it free healthcare, but very low to zero premium healthcare. We're providing them with basic necessities, over-the-counter products. We're providing them with vision and all these other services that they do need in order to stay healthy, in order to obtain jobs and things that they don't have access to. So we are out in the communities trying to assist individuals that are homeless right now, that don't even know they have access to healthcare. And we're, trying to educate individuals as best as we can. So that's our goal right now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. At the heart of this discussion, it seems like there's a drive for a call to action. It seems like just from the power of conversations, there could be partnerships that can really start serving real needs for families. I want to turn over to some of the questions that have been coming in from the crowd. One that came in, and this is maybe starting with you, Mayor Liccardo, is what's the vision around equity of access? If that were to exist, what would be that? What would be some of the outcomes that we would see if San Jose had equity of access? What's the goal around that?
Yeah, I know a lot of folks have defined it in different ways. As I define it, it's fundamentally breaking the connection between poverty and race. I believe that has that underlies, in my view, much of the extraordinary frustration that I have seen day after day emerge, particularly over the last year, as we are really facing this reckoning over racial disparities in our country. And so I think about all the ways in which we can ensure that every child who's growing up in this city knows that they are going to have a shot, as good a shot as anyone, at the prosperity of Silicon Valley. And so, just last month, we made public an effort we've been working on for quite a while called San Jose Aspires, where we've been raising money from the private sector to actually invest in micro scholarships and providing students at 3 high schools serving some of our lowest income families. They're provided with a digital platform that informs every student of what are the good decisions and tasks they need to take on to get on a college going path, because we know the majority of our public school students don't have college educated parents, and they're only getting about 12 minutes of college counseling on average in their entire 4-year high school career, if they're typical, like most public school students in California. So they're not getting any information. And so by having virtual scholarships, we call them scholar dollars, attached to those good decisions they make, the good achievements they have, and then by the end of their 4 years, those scholar dollars become real dollars they use to offset the cost of college. We can ensure that more of our students are thinking about college, making good decisions about college, starting at the age of 14, rather than being left out, and knowing that financial barriers can be overcome with these dollars. And we're making sure all these kids are filling out their FAFSA forms, and they're learning about financial aid through modules online, and they get rewarded for doing that. And so it's about providing resources and information in places, in families and communities that were never getting those resources and information, so we can finally break this horrible link between race and poverty.
Yeah, that's powerful. Any comments from the rest of you? Major Roy,
I think for us, again, from Salvation Army's perspective here in Silicon Valley, again, I echo the mayor's words. And one of the things that we are looking at doing is, because we have a variety of programs, not only for the homeless and for the seniors, but we also have youth programs as well. And you kind of touched on it, Mayor, about really connecting with the youth and being able to show them at an early age that regardless of who they are, how they identify, what their social economic background is that places, when they come to places like the Salvation Army, they have the ability, we have the infrastructure and the ability to give them the access that's needed, beyond, what Mayor was talking about, for the college, which is fantastic, but just life building skills, character building skills, opportunities to, be mentored, opportunities for them to see that they don't have to be stuck in the place where they are, that there's always something better. And again, working with corporations and other organizations to bring the right people around, to have that positive impact on youth, so we can at a very early age begin to break that cycle of either poverty or thinking that they don't have equal opportunity and access. And again, working with the different corporations, being able to bring people in to a facility, to our place here, where we can have them give them that access to that. To me, I think that's one of the components as we talk about the homeless issue. We talk about those that are in disparity from finances. Is also the impact of the youth that this is having on the youth and the youth at large. And if we can have that impact now and begin to establish the realities that they can't overcome, and have these accesses available through partnerships, through Destination Home and health benefits and through the city, man, I think we could turn around what happens here in Silicon Valley in a way that would model for the rest of the area and San Jose specific. So that's kind of what Salvation Army is beginning to look at, even more so in our existing youth programs.
Yeah. I relate. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Major Roy. I relate a lot to being a Black man in America, having come up through the urban city, not here in San Jose, but South Florida, dealing with very systemic challenges of racism, I hear a very key word in both of your programs and responses is that everybody needs a strong advocate, a very strong advocate. And going off of that, like, what role, people listening to this, can community members play? How do we help come alongside of the most vulnerable that we see in our neighborhoods to help alleviate some of the challenges? How do we partner with, you know, the big government, the big corporations, the nonprofits? Love to, like, I'm listening to this and I want to do something. How do I do something after this call?
I know I've been doing more of my share of park talking, but you know, it is really hard to connect with government. We know that, and we don't make it easy enough. But it's nonprofit organizations like Salvation Army that are really critical. Organizations that have the trust in the community, organizations that are in, you know, literally in the trenches of our neighborhoods, doing everything they need, that they possibly can to help support our community. And so I think, you know, that is the most direct way people can play a role, whether it's giving, whether it's volunteering, partnering. It's really through the nonprofits, and everything we've been doing in this pandemic is dependent enormously on our partnerships with nonprofits, and Salvation Army is a great one.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I found that with me reaching out to organizations such as the Salvation Army, I was able to access how I could help, how I could volunteer. And I will be the first to say it. Anthem has deep pockets. We have a foundation. Please, you know, utilize it. I am the first to say that to everyone I'm working with. The more that we talk, the more that we communicate, we can figure out how we can help each other. We can figure out where the connections got to go so that we can get things done. You know, if we communicate and we are open with one another, we can help make better, you know, make this better for everyone. So I know that with the Salvation Army, I made a connection with someone else in San Jose that is helping seniors directly with their healthcare, and they don't have the slightest idea how to help seniors with their healthcare. They're just doing the best that they can. So with that connection, we were able to have this, you know, transition of that they can pass off all these individuals that need access, need help. And Major Roy is working with, you know, other individuals in my area where we can help access healthcare, you know, directly, or we can help with food assistance. We can help, you know, however we can help. The more that we all communicate and refer individuals, you know, I think it's the best interest for everyone.
Yeah, Jennifer.
We don't do a good enough job in general being proximate to the people who are experiencing directly the ramifications of the structural and root cause issues that we've been talking about today. And so, you know, I think a challenge for us is to have lived expertise on our boards, on our staff, on our commissions, on our elected offices. You know, we often set policies or programs for people without asking them what they actually need. And really, I think where we have a long way to go is ensuring that those voices are not just tokenized or brought in or used for a story, but are part of the design. We have a lived experience advisory board, which is in our community that's independent and all by people who've been homeless here or are currently homeless here in this community. And things I think are a good idea, I'll tell you, they know absolutely why I don't know what I'm talking about, right? When something, and so if we're not asking and listening to people who are going to benefit from things we're thinking about, then we're going to get it wrong. You know, when we did this pandemic work together, we asked community what they needed, and we talked to, because of our partners helped us talk to 500 families, and they told us what they wanted. They wanted a small amount of money, and they wanted to get it from people that they trusted, and they didn't want it to be labeled undocumented or otherwise. And so we did that, exactly what they said, and then the money, it worked, right? And so, and it's that kind of being the vessel for the resources versus sort of needing to be the experts, right? The expertise is already in the communities that we're serving.
That's very powerful. What I hear is you got to be proximate to who you're serving, much like Silicon Valley, voice of the customer, how we iterate on products that really seek to serve and support. Same thing goes here. And so someone coming from the corporate community has tremendous value to come alongside of nonprofits and government to do this. My last question here is, I want to demystify the challenges. Like, the challenges seem big. There seems to be homelessness everywhere. What does the path from survival to thriving look like? What does that look like? Give us a vision of someone coming from the outside who's seeking to come and support surviving to thriving.
Well, I think that idea of surviving and thriving, that's really, for us in Salvation Army, that's why we do what we do for the last 130 years here in San Jose, 150 years worldwide. And it really, for us, what that looks like is literally, and we have countless stories, is literally somebody coming in off of the street, coming in for our services, whether it's somebody, again, coming in from under the bridge, dealing with their addiction, getting into our men's shelter program, and then getting sober, learning life skills. And we actually have clients that are now working for us that have gone through that process. And so we, are able to kind of reciprocate in that sense that we provide a service for them. Now they've got a skill, they're working for us, and they're helping us do our mission. But then there are those who are even more successful than that. And where, Mayor, you might be interested in this, is that we have a client that came to us about 15 years ago, went through all of the steps of everything that we offer, ended up being a fantastic employee for us, dealing with transportation. And he came to me about 2 years ago and said, Major, I want to let you know that I'm leaving you. I'm like, what do you mean you're leaving, man? You're one of our best employees. And he says, well, I put in a application for the city. And and he went through the process, and we helped him just kind of with the application and so forth. And long story short is that this gentleman is now working for the Public Works Department and is getting rave reviews from his supervisor. And he's somebody who learned a skill, somebody who's dedicated, and he learned life skills, got himself back up, and now he's making more than what he was making here for the city, which is bad for us that he left, but is great for him. And that's really what success looks like. That's what we're in the business of doing. We're in the business of restoring lives, that we're in the business of helping people that kind of fall through the cracks of society. And we couldn't do it without the partnership with the city that we've talked about, with other nonprofits, with what Destination Home is doing, and also with in the health world with Anthem Blue Cross. We can only do this because we're better together. We can't do it we can't be in silos anymore. And I think if anything we've learned a lesson from is that we can't be in silos in how we approach the need, because at the end of the day, all of us that are here, we want people to be helped, and we want them to be not only helped, but we want them to become better and to be successful so they don't have to come back to us. Our goal is, we don't want repeat clients. We want to be able to have that impact where they can be self-sufficient. And I'm just excited to see what's going to happen here in San Jose and Silicon Valley at large, as these partnerships that we're talking about today, future partnerships. You ask, what can you do? Man, if you're listening, man, if you can help us by partnering, by making connections with us, by volunteering, by mentoring, by opening up doors for us to be able to continue to reach out and change people's lives, because really that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So I'm very optimistic about what the future holds here for San Jose specifically, and Silicon Valley at large.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you, Major Roy. I love the zeal from each and every one of you. A key question, and this is kind of for the crowd. What's your call to action? I hand it back over to you, Morgan. Morgan, you're on mute. Morgan, we can't hear you.
There we go. Okay, you would think that after being in this virtual world for so long, like I would have it down pat. Oh my goodness. Well, our time is coming to a close today, and we want to be mindful of everyone's time. So we want to close it out today, but thanking all of our panelists and all of our guests for your time and participation. And of course, the recording of today's webinar will be emailed as soon as it becomes available. But on behalf of all of us at the Salvation Army Silicon Valley, thank you so much for being here today. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not thank everyone who helps make hope possible each and every day. Our staff, volunteers, partners, and of course, our amazing donors. It certainly takes an army, but together we will build a better tomorrow for our community and continue to deliver hope to those that need it most. Thank you again.